Now, I know Game Week 5 isn't even over yet, but if you know me, you know that doesn't stop me making some FPL content, and there's already plenty to talk about. So in this video, I'm going to go through players to buy and avoid ahead of Game Week 6. Now, I'm going to start off by talking about a team that, well, haven't even played yet. Obviously, they've got Man City this week, and that's Arsenal. But I think, irrespective of what happens on Sunday against Man City, doesn't really matter. As long as, you know, the half the team doesn't get injured, I think Arsenal are going to be really good. And their next two fixtures, maybe three fixtures in particular, are really ones to target in my mind. If you look at the 11FI projected odds for clean sheets and projected goals, the next two fixtures just look absolutely crazy. So clean sheet odds-wise, matchday 6, Leicester at home, matchday 7, Southampton at home. You can see the fixtures that are being oddsed up in on the right-hand side there. 57% likelihood to keep a clean sheet against Leicester, 58% likely to keep a clean sheet against Southampton, 2.82 projected goals against Leicester, and 2.9 projected goals against Southampton. So the projections are basically saying they've got two games there where they're likely to win 3-0. And, well, you very rarely see teams with more than 50% likelihood to keep a clean sheet, right? And Arsenal have it twice in 2 consecutive games. So I think Game Week 6 is potentially going to be a popular time for people to use their wildcards, for example. I would definitely be looking to get 1, maybe 2 Arsenal defenders in, because even with that fixture of Liverpool in Game Week 9, they could potentially keep a clean sheet there. And with the amount of 4 million defenders floating around, you could just sub your Arsenal players out. And either side of that, they got Bournemouth and Newcastle, 2 teams where, you know, Arsenal could conceivably keep clean sheets in those 2 games, right? 40% likelihood to keep a clean sheet against Bournemouth, 32% against Newcastle, even 34% against Liverpool, right? They could conceivably do that. And then their projected goals, even in the 3 tougher games, 8, 9 and 10, they're still predicted to score a couple of goals. So for me, it's looking like Arsenal defenders and Arsenal attackers, particularly with those next 2-3 fixtures in mind, are looking like players to buy. And, you know, I think this is going to be a popular week for people to play their wildcard. I'll have a wildcard draft coming out very soon. But in the meantime, just thinking about teams and players to target, Arsenal definitely on the menu. In specific Arsenal players to buy, well, I think there are 4 that I'd be really considering getting in my team. Obviously being Saka, who I'm going to talk about in a second, David Raya, who is emerging as probably the best goalkeeper in FPL right now, Saliba and Gabriel. Those would be the 4 that I would just think are absolutely great picks. Ben White, yes, he's a great option, as likely to start as Gabriel and Saliba, but we all know he's a little bit more expensive. And Kai Havertz, just with Odegaard's injury, I would just be a little bit concerned as to exactly where he's going to play. You know, I think Odegaard's going to be out for sort of, I think it was 8 to 12 weeks, I heard. It does look like a pretty serious ankle injury that's going to take a couple of months at least to heal in my mind. And that kind of throws out, in my mind, Havertz as an option, because I believe he played in the midfield in the Champions League against Atalanta, for example. And you don't want to be spending, he might score goals, but you don't want to be spending 8 million on a forward that's playing in midfield. I just don't like that. And Ben White, I know he was the top scoring Arsenal defender last season. He may well have been the top scoring defender in the whole game. You might have to quote me on that. But I don't think he's quite worth the 0.5 extra on top of Gabriel and Saliba. I just don't think I would spend that, hence why I put him in there as a decent pick. I can't deny that these two are probably going to start all the games and be decent options, right? Havertz is definitely going to score goals in my mind, but I just don't think he's quite there in terms of the great picks, Saka, Raya, Gabriel and Saliba. I would honestly probably avoid the rest of the Arsenal players. Trossard, Martinelli, for sure will get amongst the goals, but I just don't think their minutes are secure enough. So stick to those 4 that I think are great picks. If you want to be, you know, a little bit risky, maybe go for those decent ones. But Saka, Raya, Gabriel and Saliba, I think, are the ones to go for. Speaking of Saka, he is probably the best Arsenal player, right? He is absolutely the club's talisman now. He's their best player and, of course, takes penalties. He plays 90 minutes on the regular and he is just absolutely nailed to start on that right-hand side. With Sterling in the squad, I might be eating my own words there eventually. But I still think, you know, he's going to be nailed on there. And that, for me, is just all of the boxes of a good FPL asset ticked. So he's on penalties, starts every game, plays 90 minutes. Even with injury, Arteta tries to wheel him out, right? I think quite a lot of time last season he was struggling with some kind of issue or injury, but he still kept playing, and might not be good for him, but for FPL it is, because you can pretty much rely on him starting, and if he doesn't, you tend to get, you know, a bit of a heads up of that. Obviously, the fixtures are really good. His stats this season are pretty good. Only 1 goal and 4 assists, so, you know, returns so far more weighted towards assists. But you look at his stats last season, right? 16 goals, 12 assists from 35 starts. Just absolutely amazing. Like, he is a tried and trusted, proven Premier League goal scorer and assister, right? So you can guarantee he's going to get, in my mind, as long as he doesn't get injured, you can guarantee he's going to get some returns in those upcoming games, right? And I put here, he is, according to FPL Review. Now, a lot of people, not necessarily me, I really like FPL Review, don't get me wrong, but a lot of people see FPL Review as absolute like gospel for their transfers, and I'll admit it's really good. I don't need to admit it, it is really good. And FPL Review has Saka as the top player for expected points for Game Week 6 by basically a point. He is a point ahead of Cole Palmer, and if you look at the expected minutes, say if you crank that up to, you know, Palmer, Haaland, all up to 90, Saka's, you know, still the number 1. So FPL Review-wise has Saka as the number 1 player for expected points in Game Week 6, which obviously means it projects him to be the best captain. And you look at the Fantasy Football Hub expected points on the right-hand side, it's got Haaland and Salah slightly ahead, but it still has Saka on 7.3, and that's obviously matching what FPL Review has. So, you know, he could well be the best captain going into Game Week 6, right? And why would you not want to own a player who, you know, ticks all of those boxes and is just the best captain according to FPL Review, right? I think, you know, certainly for me, I'll be looking to bring him in. The stars are aligning to bring Saka in and genuinely consider him as a captain option for Game Week 6. Now, some people may have gone early already on Brentford assets, but their next sort of 5-6 fixtures are just, they're absolutely great in my mind. They've got West Ham, Wolves both at home, Man United away, Ipswich and Fulham. Not necessarily saying all of these games are excellent for clean sheet odds, although I'd say probably 3 of the 5, particularly the home games, are pretty decent. But for goals, I think they're going to do pretty well. West Ham, Wolves, Man United, Ipswich, Fulham, you cannot tell me that these teams are solid defensively. And the predicted goals, or the projected goals according to 11ify, kind of testify to that. In most of their games, they're projected to score a couple of goals, right? And the clean sheet odds are also pretty good, apart from that matchday 8-1 against Man United. And as a result, I think there are a couple of Brentford players that really should be on your radar. First of all, I spoke about him last week, but I think Flecken right now, maybe if you're a Dean Henderson owner and want to do kind of a like-for-like swap, he is probably the best 4.5 million goalkeeper in FPL for the next few game weeks, right? And extending beyond those 5 game weeks that we looked at, they've got Bournemouth, Everton and Leicester afterwards. So the 3 fixtures after that are also really good. And for me, the best goalkeepers in FPL are ones that keep kind of an average level of clean sheets, right? They don't break the bank's probably the wrong term, but they don't keep, you know, loads and loads of clean sheets. But what they do is make a lot of saves, and saves points in FPL for me are far more reliable and consistent than clean sheets. And Flecken is making 5.6 saves per 90, 5 starts, 28 saves so far. So he, if you average it up, 5.6 rounded up as you round correctly is 6, which is the maximum saves bonus a goalkeeper in FPL can get. And he's averaging that every game. So just bear that in mind. You know, he's got good fixtures coming up. You know, I would say Man United, Fulham possibly, he'd struggle to keep a clean sheet in. But all the other games, I wouldn't rule it out at all. I know they played 5 games and not had any clean sheets yet, but be fair to them, they've had some tough fixtures so far, right? That run comes to an end and it gets a little bit easier, and I think Flecken is going to emerge as a really good option. Now, I don't think I'm saying anything people will be surprised about. He scored again in Game Week 5. I just think Brian Mbeumo is absolutely excellent in FPL. And I would go back to what I said about Saka. Players in FPL for me that play every game, take penalties, free kicks, and they're on the pitch for 90 minutes. They just tick all the boxes for me in FPL, and that's what I want in good FPL assets. And it's undeniable that Mbeumo is now Brentford's just absolute talisman and best player. You know, there's no Wissa, no Tony, still managed to bag against Tottenham, of course. And yeah, I would say right now in the game, he's probably the best under 8 million goalkeeper. I'm just going to go back to Flecken. Actually, no, I'll go back to the stats. Those projected goals in upcoming fixtures for Brentford, we'll just look at Flecken for those fixtures, right? You tell me, West Ham, Wolves, Man United, Ipswich, Fulham, Bournemouth, Everton, Leicester. Is there a game there where you don't think Brentford can score? I think they could score in each of those games. And obviously, being their talisman, you've got to think Mbeumo is going to be involved in those goals in some way, shape or form. And yeah, he's just obviously had a really good start to this season, and I think he's a really good option. And, you know, I'm not necessarily saying immediately sell Eze for him if that's something you're considering. But given that Eze is now kind of sharing penalty responsibility with Mateta, Crystal Palace's fixtures take a little bit of a turn and get a bit tougher. Could maybe going Eze to Mbeumo be a good move as well? Just a suggestion. I know Eze is a really popular asset as well. But just thinking back to what I said about Arsenal and feeling that Game Week 6 might be a popular time for people to wildcard, I think Mbeumo is going to become a really popular player. And I also think his price is going to go up this week. So he won't be 7.1 million for long. So just bear that in mind when you're looking at bringing him in as well. Because, yeah, he's not going to stay that price, I don't think, at the end of the week. So, yeah. Brentford, I'd definitely be eyeing up, but I would be careful about the assets that I pick because, you know, they've gone 5 games so far and not kept a clean sheet. Whilst I think Flecken's a really decent option at 4.5 million because he makes a lot of saves, outside of that, I'm not seeing too much excitement. Obviously, Shade, however you pronounce it, didn't play today. So, yes, I think Brentford are good, but in reality, there's only a couple of players I'd really be looking for, and that is, of course, Flecken and Mbeumo, who I've mentioned there. So yeah, Brentford looking good, but I'd keep it limited to the options I'd truly consider. There's another win for Liverpool in Game Week 5 and another clean sheet. Beat Bournemouth, of course, 3-0. And I think that defensive run is going to continue. You know, they've kept 4 clean sheets in 5 games in the Premier League so far. So, I mean, for me, that kind of makes them the leading defence in the league so far right now. And I know their fixtures kind of turn a little bit for the next 3, 4, 5. You know, Wolves, Palace, Chelsea, Arsenal, Brighton is a little bit tougher than what they've faced already. But 4 clean sheets in 5 games, I would say that's a big enough sample size so far. You know, Slot's got his kind of philosophy across those players. It's enough to suggest that they're going to be pretty good defensively for the rest of the season. And the clean sheet odds kind of back that up. I would say the Arsenal game is kind of a misnomer in there, but I certainly wouldn't rule out Liverpool being able to score against Arsenal in that one. And ultimately, it wouldn't be the most outrageous thing in the world for them to keep a clean sheet and maybe just be a 0-0 draw. And then Wolves, Crystal Palace, Chelsea in 6, 7 and 8. And then Brighton in 10. You know, those are all fixtures where, based on how they've played so far, they could conceivably keep a clean sheet in. Particularly considering the 2 kind of tougher fixtures on this list. Well, barring Arsenal, of course, are both at home. I think being at home really improves Liverpool just in general. So keep a clean sheet there. And then projected goals, again, apart from that Arsenal game, could conceivably score in that as well. They're looking really good. Over basically 2 or over expected or projected goals according to 11 a fight in those fixtures. I think in particular right now, Trent and Robertson are looking pretty amazing. Trent in particular, I don't think he's getting enough hype in this game right now. 5 starts, 4 clean sheets, 1 assist, and he is putting up 0.49 expected returns per 90, which on the face of it doesn't look all that amazing. But if we just go back, if Saka's still there, if we just go back to Saka, he's putting up 0.64, which is not all that far away, right, from the numbers that Trent is putting up right now. That's basically, he's expected to get 1 return every 2 games based on those numbers. That's what it's suggesting. So a player that's kept 4 clean sheets in 5 games, and the underlying numbers are suggesting he's expected to get 1 attacking return every 2 games, extrapolate that out to how he could do this season based on those stats. And I think for 7 million, the points potential is amazing because Trent kind of is separate from most, well, maybe not Robertson because he's pretty good from an attacking perspective as well, but he's in a sort of separate field, I think, from the rest of the defenders in FPL because, well, maybe Pedro Porro in there as well with Spurs not being as good defensively. But he is a player every season you can guarantee will get returns through 3 different means. You can guarantee he's going to score some goals because he obviously takes free kicks and has a great long-range shot on him. You can guarantee he's going to get assists, got his first assist in Game Week 4. You can guarantee he's going to keep clean sheets. He is a player that can get returns through 3 different means. And I think the money you pay for each of these guys, they're worth it, right? Sort of if you think from a points per million perspective, I think they'll be there or thereabouts around the same. And honestly, I wouldn't rule out a Liverpool defensive double up as well. I know we said that the Arsenal fixtures coming up are really good, but I just think that the defensive difference that, or the attacking upside that these two have and what they've proven so far this season in terms of clean sheets still pushes them slightly ahead of those Arsenal defenders. That might be a controversial thing to say, so let me know in the comments what you think of that. But I really wanted to bring attention to just how good of a start to the season Trent has had from an underlying numbers perspective. I think 0.49, if we showed Saka there, but I think 0.49 expected returns per 90. I'm pretty sure Ollie Watkins last season, where he got 19 goals and 18 assists, if I remember rightly, he got 0.5 expected returns per 90. I think it was, what, 0.51, 0.52? Happy to be corrected in the comments, but I think it was around there. And that's not too far off where Trent is. And he got 19 goals and 18 assists last season. That is how dangerous Trent is proven to be so far. I'll stop rambling about it, but I needed to talk about Trent. Now, before Game Week 5 actually began, who would you think is the best 4.5 or 5 million or below defender in the game for points? And it was Ola Aina of Forest. Forest, before, it's hard to take these stats now because some teams have played 5 fixtures, some teams have still played 4. But going into Game Week 5, Nottingham Forest were the 3rd best team in the league for expected goals against. I think they got Nuno as their manager, right? If you remember how he was at Wolves, playing 5 at the back, etc., he was quite a defensive manager, and that's kind of his trade. And he's turned, obviously, Forest into one of his teams. And Aina's kept 2 clean sheets from 4 starts. Not really offering too much from an attacking perspective, but I wanted to mention him because if you're on your wild card, for example, I think there's a bit of a shortage of 4.5 million defenders that I would really, really want to chuck in my team. Maybe the likes of Colwell, etc., could be good options now, given Chelsea have kept a couple of clean sheets consecutively. But going into Game Week 5, Aina was the top scoring sub 5 million defender, and you can see why. Forest are the 3rd ranked team in the league for clean sheets, and they've kept 2 clean sheets from 4 games so far. So I really like him as an option. I don't have a whole lot to say about him. He's not lit the world up from an attacking perspective. He has already risen in price this week, gone up to 4.5 from 4.4. But I wanted to talk about him as a little option because, again, thinking that Game Week 6 is probably going to be a pretty popular time for people to wildcard, he's a player I think you should really consider for it. Now, I spoke in the segments about clubs, specific clubs that I think, are worth having your eye on, basically, in terms of good stats and good projections. This is a full extract from 11 of 5, all of the Premier League teams for the next 5 game weeks. Their clean sheet odds and projected goals, and I've ranked them by a combined total average, basically. Clean sheet odds wise, I didn't mention Man City, but they still sit as the number 1 team for clean sheet odds, right? So if you've got Man City defenders, would you really want to rush them out with those clean sheet odds? I just asked the question and played devil's advocate there. Obviously, we discussed Arsenal and their clean sheet likelihood. Likewise, Arsenal. One team that I haven't mentioned all that much, and I'll do a little feature on Everton next, actually. So this won't be the last part of the video. But Everton coming up have some pretty decent fixtures. Now, I don't want to get carried away with Everton because they have had a pretty poor start to things so far. But their fixture run coming up looks really good. And there's one player in particular that I think could be a nice little cheeky punt. But, I won't get too carried away. I'll talk about him in a second. Brentford again up there. They're the 5th best for clean sheet odds. Likewise, Forest, Villa, Spurs. You can see them for clean sheet odds there. In terms of teams from an attacking perspective, we've got Man City, Liverpool, Arsenal, Spurs and Villa as the top 5. Couple of players I wanted to talk about there. Spurs and Dominic Solanke in particular. He's sitting currently at 7-8% ownership now. I'm not going to do a specific use case on him, but I just wanted to talk about use case. Is that the right word? A specific case study, something like that. Anyway, I think he's a really good option. And the reason I do think he's a good option is because, well, he's a tried and trusted Premier League goal scorer. Obviously, scored a goal in Game Week 4, but we don't get carried away with just 1 goal. He scored 19 goals playing for Bournemouth last season, right? You've got to think Spurs are better than Bournemouth from an attacking perspective, right? So, in my mind, he's going to do better than that for Spurs this season. And at 7% ownership, I mean, I just think he's such a good option with that low ownership, right? Because usually players who you'd consider, well, differentials like Solanke would be at 7% ownership. They carry a little bit of risk with them, injury prone, might not start, might not play 90, etc. I don't think Solanke is that. And it would kind of be the same with Jarrod Bowen as well. West Ham not gotten off to a great start, but has decent fixtures coming up. The idea of bringing differential players in your team that have a tried and trusted Premier League goal scoring record. Yeah, I really like the idea of it. A player I didn't mention as well, obviously we know Salah from Liverpool, but Luis Diaz has gotten off to a really smart start this season as well. Seems to be Slot's favoured player on that left wing position, particularly in the Premier League, and he's playing like godly levels at the moment. Sorry, I hit my mic because I got so excited then. So Liverpool, of course, the 2nd best team for projected goals in their upcoming games. got to think Luis Diaz, as a result, is going to be a good option. I really like Watkins. I really like Jackson of Chelsea. He seems to be nailed on to start up front at the moment. And I think Jackson has kind of found that finishing confidence that he was lacking last season. So he's turning into someone who I think could be a really good option, of course, alongside Cole Palmer. That's probably it, actually, in terms of players I really wanted to highlight from that projected goals and clean sheet odds data. But yeah, hopefully that gives you a bit more of a roundup from just the teams that I specifically spoke about. That Everton differential's coming up. I'm not going to sit here and preach to you that McNeil is the best player in the game. That's not what I'm trying to do. And to be honest, I'm not even sure he's the best Everton asset. I think that's probably Calvert-Lewin, given he's the penalty taker. And actually seems to be stringing games together fully fit now. But I couldn't ignore the fixtures, similar to Brentford, that Everton have coming up. Their next, 9 fixtures are all sort of green-grey ones. And there's a couple of tough teams mixed in there, Newcastle and Man United. But you cannot tell me that those two teams are good defensively. You know, they've both been shipping a lot of goals so far this season. And I know Everton have not gotten off to a good start at all. They've been really poor defensively, but have still managed to put some goals away. Like I said, I think Calvert-Lewin's probably the best Everton asset, but I do think Dwight McNeil at 5.4 million could be a decent punt. He's got 3 attacking returns from 5 games so far this season. 0.6 expected returns per 90 is kind of up there with Brian and Boomer, who we just spoke about. That's the kind of level that he's performing at the moment. And I just can't ignore those upcoming Everton fixtures. I know, there's a lot of stuff going on about Everton at the moment. You see it on Twitter, they're getting, a lot of abuse for playing poorly, and obviously didn't win in Gameweek 4 either. But they have scored goals and they've got good fixtures. And we all know that fixtures, the old saying in FPL, fixtures create form. And for scoring goals in an attacking perspective, at least, going back to those projected odds as well, not actually all that good for projected goals, to be fair. Clean sheet wides they are, but that's backed up by the fact that the fixtures are good. That's what I was trying to say. The fixtures are good coming up anyway. If you want to take a super cheeky punt, Dwight McNeil could be a good option. There's a bit of a funny gag to put at the end there, as I thought it would entertain you and make you laugh, but I couldn't ignore those upcoming Everton fixtures, and there is a bit of a serious point involved as well. So I mentioned that Calvert-Lewin's probably the best Everton player, but Dwight McNeil could be a nice differential if you fancied it. Alright, and that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed that and found it useful. If you did, please leave me a like rating on the video. I've injured my shoulder, so I can't really lift my arm all that much to put my thumbs up. What was I going to say? Is there anything else? Yeah, let me know in the comments what you think of the players I've recommended there. I always say this, but FPL is all about different opinions, right? If we all had the same opinions, we'd all pick the same players, our teams would all be the same, and it'd be really boring. So I really value people's different opinions. But I'll just be polite about it in the comments. Please don't need to get into an argument about it. I'm not going to lose any sleep if your opinion's different to mine. So yeah, just be polite about it. I think that's it. If you enjoyed the video and haven't already subscribed and you're new around here, please subscribe to the Golden Goal channel, which should be just there on your screen. I think around 75% of the people that watch my regular uploaded videos are not actually subscribed to the channel. I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe. Consider joining as a member as well. You get early access to pretty much all of the videos that I upload. And yeah, I'll give you priority. I'll do 2 or 3 live streams a week. I'm going to do a reaction stream on Sunday evening. I'll do a final thoughts stream the day before the deadline and a 3-hour-long deadline stream usually. So plenty of opportunity to get priority engagement with me in the live chat and those as well. So do consider joining as a member. Subscribe again, which should be just there. It might have moved, flashed up, depending on how YouTube works. Yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you in my next video.